Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be looking through episodes 1 through 5 of the original Avatar: The Last Airbender's second season. This is my first time watching through this show. If you're interested in seeing thoughts on the first season, I'll have my Avatar playlist linked, but I just want to jump right into the second season and get right to it. Before getting into individual thoughts regarding each of the episodes, I do want to give some general thoughts, and especially going through, segueing from the height of the last season and where we left off to where we're beginning this season. I think it's always a difficult transition. You want to ensure that you are having the characters feel like they were impacted by the events that had occurred before, while also segueing into something new. And I think that can be really difficult to accomplish. It's a similar thing that you'll see in books, especially middle books in series. How do you transition out of a great ending to a first book, or just a great first entry into a series? How do you segue from that and then build into another book while still having the one in between stand on its own as a solid story, or at least is doing interesting and creative things? And the first episode of this second season, I was so excited by. I really loved it. I feel like they accomplished all of that, and we'll get into it when we go into specifics. The second episode was super goofy, and I think it was necessary to have some silly moments mixed in after not just a heavy first episode, but how heavy everything was at the end of the first season. The following 3 episodes for me were among some of the weaker ones that I have seen of the show. This at this point would be 25 episodes in that I have seen. We have had such amazing highs in the show so far, so I was a little bit bummed that not too far into season 2 we had some of what I'm hoping end up being some of the weaker moments of this whole season. But all that said, let's get into now the specifics. So this first episode of this season, which is titled The Avatar State, as usual, if you don't know, I write notes as I'm watching through the show, and then I just kind of reference back to these notes and just do this casual chat through of these sort of impressions, of these first impressions of the first time ever watching this show. The Avatar State, I wrote Aang being afraid of himself. Well done. So when he's having this nightmare about what he did, I even said at the end of the first season, like, pretty sure Aang's killed some people at this point, right? He went into God mode. He became extremely destructive. Obviously, it saved the day, but at what cost? That's sort of the question, especially for someone so young and have so much weight put on his shoulders. And so I thought them reflecting on this, having him reflect on it, was the right call. And not just the right call, but I thought it was done really well. It would have frustrated me if it was just like, well, on to the next thing, and everybody was chipper and happy and we didn't think about the impact of that. And so I was really happy to see that they did that. I was pretty sure they would, because they've done a number of times now these deeper moments that really reflect on some of the heavier aspects of what's transpiring. So I expected it, and not only did they do it, but I thought they did a great job with it. And it just made me sad for Aang. I also wrote, seeing allies now using him as sad but realistic, and them guilt-tripping him, that really upset me when they're like, well, every day people are dying, so who cares if you're ready yet? You need to do something now. And I think anytime you have any kind of chosen one type character, once it's become known that they are, sorry, just making all sorts of noise in this chair, but once it's become known that they are as powerful as they are, their presence is becoming more established. I think that you do see so often other people are trying to control them, use them, and sometimes it's for the right reasons, but how they go about it is still wrong, or sometimes it's for the wrong reasons, but maybe they're manipulative and they're enticing in some way. So to see somebody who is supposed to be an ally, who's supposed to be on Aang's side, and who's willing to pretty much abuse him and his friends into submission, I thought was awful but realistic. And I was glad Katara stuck up for Aang, but I also was just so sad because the guilt tripping of Aang, I'm like, he's just a little boy, leave him alone. I also really appreciated Saka and his sort of simple support in this. Not simple like stupid, but just the way that he's like, yeah, Aang, I've got your back. Because Aang was like, I'm really sorry. You know, he's having this dilemma with Katara, and then Sokka's just kind of like, all right, cool. And then when he changes his mind, he's like, okay, cool. He just is down for whatever, and I'm like, no, I appreciate that. I really like both Sokka and Katara. I wouldn't say like one of them is right all the time or one of them is better or anything like that. I think they both feel like such realistic characters, but they're so different from one another and how that manifests in their actions and the way in which they treat Aang and the interactions they have with him. I just think it's really well done. I like that she tends to lean more toward the principled side of things. She thinks through things, where Sokka's just kind of a go with the flow sort of guy. He's very practical, and I just think that it made me happy that the both of them, they wanted to support Aang, but what that support looked like was different between the two of them. Oh my gosh. The stuff with Zuko in this episode and Iro, when Azula shows up, and I'm like, there she is. Because I've been waiting ever since I saw that little glimpse of her in the One Storm episode. I've been waiting for this character to show up and see what's going on. And she's awful, which I was expecting. But when they're tempting Zuko with, oh, father just regrets it and everything, and Iroh's kind of like, I don't think that this is right. This doesn't sound right at all. But Zuko is just, he suddenly is such a little boy again of like, father regrets it? And you're like, no, it's a trap. Don't do it. But when Iro is telling him, you know, don't go, and he's like, but father cares about me, and he's like, I care about you, and Iro says that, I'm like, oh, just the two of you just go live somewhere together and be happy. You know, that's what I want for these two. It made me sad. I feel like that's my conclusion to a lot of these. Oh, this made me sad. But then also, man, when Zuko says he's lazy, mistrustful, and shallow, I was like, no, stop. Don't lash out at Iro. He loves you. But, okay. Still, though, within this one episode, when Iro is like, I'm not, pretty much, he doesn't say this out loud, but he ends up deciding I'm going to stick by Zuko. And he's like, hey, I'm coming with you. And Zuko, again, that's like the little childish part of him. Like, not childish like he's being immature, but just this childlike aspect to him when he's like, Uncle, you've changed your mind. And it was the most sweet. It's the sweetest he's ever sounded. I wrote, first time Zuko genuinely seemed sweet happy. And not just like brooding, but just Uncle, you changed your mind, and this happiness that his uncle was that somebody would stick with him. It makes me so sad. It's so good. This first episode was so good. Iro rage mode also was fantastic when it turned out it was a trap, and seeing Iro stand by Zuko was great. And then when Aang is being manipulated by the earth benders and Katara is being trapped in the earth, and he's like, no, stop, and he starts crying. I was so mad. I was like, stop, leave him alone. I was upset. And I also was thinking, it seemed like he just did damage to property, basically, but I'm like, is he gonna accidentally kill a bunch of people? No, because the weight, it's already, I'm getting so loud, I'm sorry. The weight that we're already seeing being placed on his shoulders and the guilt, if he had then been pushed into accidentally harming other people, especially his allies, man, that would have been devastating. I mean, I'm glad it didn't happen. So, but still, him crying. I also did know, I think it's interesting, the idea that you can't kill the Avatar in the Avatar state. Well, you can, but if you do, that means that the Avatar will no longer come back. And I think that's interesting that they included that little tidbit. It makes me nervous because I'm like, are they going to somehow manage to kill Aang when he's in the Avatar state, but then because it's never happened before, is it going to turn out that maybe that statement's not exactly accurate? Like, how would they know that that's true if it's never happened before? Because obviously it can't have happened before if the Avatars always come back. So I feel like at some point, somehow, he is going to be killed while in the Avatar state, and then I don't know what's going to happen as a result of that. That's a prediction of mine, but it's probably wrong. And then Zuko cutting his hair, and I put /Iro not hesitating. When Zuko does that and Iro just immediately does it with him, there's no words spoken, there's no need to be like, oh, I guess I'll do it too, or anything like that. Just immediate. Just Iro being there for Zuko. The next episode, it was goofy, but I also enjoyed it very much. So the episode after that was The Cave of Two Lovers. And oh my gosh, do you know that because I was like, so they basically meet stoners. And the main guy's name among this band of nomads is Chong. Did you guys know that? Because that had to have been very intentional and kind of a joke. One among the writers. Luna finds it funny too. That had to have been a joke among the writers. But then also I'm wondering, for people that watched it as children, if any parent ever walked in and heard the voice that they gave this character and then heard his name was Chong and were like, wait a sec, that's really funny. But then they couldn't explain to their children why that was funny. Anyway, so I thought that was hilarious. Zuko and Iro being totally helpless in this, I think it's really great in showing how much it really is going to cost Zuko to come away from this, for lack of a better word, toxic environment that it seems, and this horrible dynamic with his family. And the Fire Nation in general, they're horrible. So to see them entirely helpless, it really shows if he wants to come away from it, it is not going to be easy. It also shows just how willing Iro is to be with him through everything, and that he still has this more optimistic, positive attitude, and that it's not shared by Zuko. It's really hard for Zuko to accept that this is his life now, but I think that this is going to result in some fantastic character growth throughout the season. I'm hoping anyway. Appa is scared when they're trapped in the mountain. That made me really upset. I'm going to keep to the Aang, Sokka, and Katara plotline, and then we're going to talk about why this episode, despite being primarily silly, still really stuck out as a really phenomenal episode for me. Sokka in this episode, I wrote, Sokka is me, because these people were so obnoxious and so annoying. So for Sokka to sort of be that stand-in where he's the pragmatic one, he's frustrated at everything, I was like, yep, I am right there with you. It did remind me a little bit too, because the people would constantly just start singing songs and he's like, stop singing, is that if you were ever in music growing up, it didn't matter if you were band or orchestra, but at some point, more than likely, you had to go on a trip with the choir kids. And the choir kids would always sing on the bus. And I was never going to be that person that was like, shut up, because that's not who I am. But internally, that's who I am. Ah, man, I was always so frustrated. Like, why do they have to sing all the time? Why? Can you not sing on this bus ride at 5 a.m.? I would really appreciate if you did not. And if you were one of those choir kids that sang, I hope that it really filled you with joy, because it didn't fill me with joy, so somebody has to have gotten something positive out of it. To me, that was Sokka in this episode. The part when Aang tells Katara, because he can't obviously admit, like, I would love to kiss you, because he's sheepish and shy about that, as you would expect. But if you don't remember, they're trapped inside this mountain, and there's a whole thing about love will light the way, and they're like, well, maybe if we kiss. And so Aang's like, oh, geez, and he tells her that he's like, I would definitely not want to, kiss you. And she's like, oh, geez, I didn't realize it was going to be such a burden. And then he's like, I'm saying I'd rather kiss you than die. It's a compliment. That poor Aang, because then he was like, oh, darn. Now on to the Zuko part. So when Zuko is speaking to that nice family that brings him and Iro in and feeds them, and he, one, is seeing what the Fire Nation has taken from other people. And not only that, but how much the war itself has impacted people. So there's the direct impact, and then there's other aspects of it that are a little more distant. But at the very least, people's lives are forever changed because of the actions of the Fire Nation. And he's seeing this. And I think that the easy route to go would be like, look, snap your fingers. Zuko understands now everything that his father is responsible for. And he now, especially because he's felt that personal destruction, basically, of his entire life. So you would think he would immediately be like, well, that's that then. He sucks, and I'm going to find the Avatar, and we're going to be pals, and we're going to work together to take him down. Instead, he steals from them. And you see the girl see him steal from them, and then she's sad, and Iro just kind of doesn't know what to do with it. And Iro, I have thoughts on this. I'm actually going to save my thoughts for after watching future episodes, but I keep wondering, like, why isn't he pushing back a little bit more? Is he afraid to push back because he thinks if I push back, then there will be no one, and then Zuko will just spiral even more? But anyway, he steals from this family. And I'm really, when I first saw it, I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? But thinking about it, the way I interpreted it was that Zuko now sees himself as irredeemable. He knows the part he's played, and he has resigned himself to the role of villain, basically. Like, he isn't good enough to be redeemed. I think deep down there is sort of a hatred of himself, and he's lost. And he's directing his anger now at the Avatar as though somehow that's the problem. Because deep down, he still craves, I think, that love from his family, and he wants to belong. But he also, by wanting that from something that's so obviously bad, then he doesn't know how to grapple with that. So I think he's starting to see himself as bad. I don't think by saying he's resigned himself to the role of villain, I'm not saying I think he's going to be the villain for the whole show now. I just mean that I think he had to get to this point where he's starting to reflect, and he needs to fall even further in every way before he's going to really come out of it. I was just thinking that if we at some point see Zuko cry, full on sobbing, he realizes he doesn't have anything, he really reflects on what he's done and how he wants to be a better person. If we get any kind of scene like that of Zuko breaking down, I think that I don't usually cry watching shows. There's times, though, that there's certain shows when I go back and rewatch them. I've said before, Arcane, the bridge scene. Oh my gosh, just thinking about that scene makes me so emotional. Thinking about the running scene makes me emotional. So there's certain things that when I think back on them, I have to tell myself, like, okay, keep it together. But because of the nature of how I'm going about this, where I'm watching parts of the show, discussing, and then theorizing, it's almost as if it's already a thing that has happened. So then if I were to see it, it would be like seeing it again or something. I don't know. Just thinking about Zuko potentially falling apart and having a breakdown makes me really devastated. I don't know. If that happens, I guess I'll see it because I'm planning to keep going. Anyway, in the nature of continuing on, the next few episodes. So I feel really bad, but the Omashu city, did I write this in my notes? Yes, I said I wish they could make better episodes with this city. So I don't know what it is, but Aang's friend that is now a very old man and king, I just think what a waste of time. Every time I didn't like his episode in the first season, episode 5. And then to see him again and the city again, and I do want to say I like the way that we're kind of coming back to places we've been before, and we're seeing, basically it's like a good way to show how much time has passed and how much has happened since our journey has started. So I do think seeing that the Fire Nation has captured the city now and how it's affected the city, I think all of that is done well. But as far as the actual sort of personal parts of the show, Aang's friend, everything like that, I'm like, why can't they make a good episode with this guy? I'm bummed because I think the idea of there being this one person from Aang's past who's still alive is they could have done something really great with it. And in my opinion, neither of the episodes with this city and this character have been great. So that bums me out. And then I was also frustrated because there's the whole thing with the baby, and that lasted too long, and I'm like, geez, what is up with this city and this place, this episode? I don't know why it's always so goofy, and it's not funny the same way some of the other funny episodes are. I think now it's just like an irritation for me. I don't know. Because I already didn't like the episode in the first. It was my first bad episode. Not bad as in terrible, but the first 4 episodes of the first season were so good, and then the 5th one, which is the previous one that we show this character in city, I was like, oh, that one wasn't as good. So I think there's almost a negativity built in already, so maybe that I'm seeing it in that way, and that's clouding my judgment. But I just felt like the baby stuff lasted too long, where the baby's going after Momo, and then, oh no, now it's going down the mail system, and then, oh geez, look, it's gonna end up with the people that are leaving the city. Oh no, I didn't care at all. I did like when Aang returned the baby. I thought that was sweet. But otherwise, I just don't. The fight scene was not my favorite fight scene. Azula right now is leaning into annoying territory as far as her as a villain. She's not as compelling to me as Zuko. I found Zuko compelling immediately. Azula almost right now feels like a sense of, you thought Zuko was bad? Well, check out Azula, his sister. And I'm like, I want there to be complexity with her too. So I'm waiting to see something with her that makes me feel like there's a person behind that. And I'm sure we will, because I think the big bad is going to be the father. So I'm waiting to see. We have glimpses of it as far as her perfectionist nature. Obviously, her father has impacted her negatively as well. I just find that Zuko has always been more nuanced and there's been depth there, whereas with her right now, I'm not seeing it and I'm waiting until we do. But anyway, so you get this fight scene with her and Aang and Katara and Sokka and then her two little gal pals that she recruits. So I did like the classic anime run from her one friend who just throws her arms back when she's running. Anyway, I just didn't like this episode. I think that's all it really comes down to. Not my favorite. And, I was going to say, after everything, when Aang finally rescues his friend's like, I can't teach you. You need somebody who listens. I'm just like, so this whole episode was pointless on top of all of it? So anyway, episode 4, The Swamp. I'm going to use the word again, but this time it's in my notes, so I'm just reading my notes. I put, Appa stuck in the vines is sad, because he kept getting stuck in the vines, and I felt bad for him. Katara seeing her mom, and Sokka seeing Yue, and hearing Yue say, why didn't you protect me? I think that was, for me, the best part of this episode, because I really appreciate the reflection on the things that have happened, the way in which these characters have lives that have occurred before the show for Katara's vision, and then with Sokka, the way that everything with Yue is still lingering with him, so I appreciated that. And then I put the Blue Spirit is back, best part of the episode. I just really wasn't a fan of either of these two episodes. I thought some of the humor was kind of funny, but in general, I think after those first two, I was hoping for a little bit more, and these two are just not as strong. And then episode 5, Avatar Day. This one was mildly entertaining, Sokka being the detective, and then every time Katara comes to a conclusion, he's like, wait, it has to be me. And so that was kind of fun, but it felt, these 3 episodes have felt slightly filler-ish to me. And I wish that wasn't the case. I did really like, though, one, when Aang is in prison, because if you don't remember, he's being put on trial for the actions of Avatar Kyoshi. And I actually thought the vision where you actually see what happened, I was like, Kyoshi was awesome. And I also think it just shows how unfair it is, once again, to hit this point, that Aang, as a small child, is the one that's expected to save everybody, when in the past you had these very established people who had to deal with things that you would expect adults to deal with. Anyway, Kyoshi was cool. You see what actually happened, and how strong they were, where they just separated the land from the rest of it so that it would be an island. I was like, that's pretty cool. So I liked the lore and the history part of things. But anyway, as far as the humor, when Aang is talking to the other prisoners, and they're encouraging him about Katara, it was so funny when they're like, she'll see what a great, wonderful boy you are. And so I thought that was super amusing. I put that the Zuko plot is carrying the first 5 episodes. I think in the first season, they were both great. And so far, I'm hoping it's just that we have, instead of having filler episodes later, that we have a couple of goofy episodes here at the beginning, and then the rest of the season is going to be a knockout of a season. But I do feel like Zuko's plotline, he's carrying it all on his shoulders, and Aang's plotline, so far, not the best, in my opinion. I think I'm disappointed too, because the first episode was so good, and I was expecting to see more and more and more of this conflict among allies where Aang was going to be used. Anyway, I already talked about all of that, but I just feel like we haven't quite capitalized on how good of a start the season had. Speaking of Zuko carrying this season so far, when he tells his uncle we no longer have anything to gain by traveling together and they go their separate ways, I'm wondering, because I don't know, because I haven't watched more, if Iroh's actually secretly going to be following Zuko. I don't know. I can't imagine Iroh's going to really let him go, because Zuko, you're leaving him alone too. That's sad. He's been there for you through everything. Don't leave him. I understand it's Zuko feels that Iro, well, there's a lot of things. I guess I can't say I understand because we'll see. So I don't know if I even want to try to pick apart this decision just yet, because on one hand, it could be a continuation of everything where he feels like his uncle's holding him back. He needs to do whatever he needs to do, all these things. And that Iro is sort of well, to me, it fits what I was saying before. Iroh's trying to tell him, pretty much, you do not need to become this person that you've decided you are, basically. He doesn't say those exact words, but he's trying to encourage him to be hopeful and to believe in something good. And I think he's trying to keep Zuko from spiraling and turning into this person Zuko has already decided he is. But at this point, Zuko's decided he is, in my opinion, he thinks he is irredeemable. Thus, it makes sense to him that this person who is kind of holding him back, and by holding him back, it's like keeping him afloat. He's pushing that person away so that he doesn't have to be reminded that he's going down this darker path. And he thinks I need to figure some things out for myself. I think he wants permission to really fall into this place, this dark place, without feeling guilty. And I think Iro makes him feel bad. That's my analysis of that thus far. I don't think it's a simple, oh, my uncle is annoying me. Because the way they part and the way that he speaks to him and things like that, he's so resigned, but in a kind of tragic way, not in this thing that he does off the cuff. I've decided I'm leaving. He's not acting out of a certain sudden emotion. Anyway, I'm very eager to see where that goes. But back to the silliness of the rest of this episode. I really liked when I'm ending it with 2 fun Sokka quotes. I like when Sokka gets his boomerang back, and he's like, "Boomerang, you do always come back," and he gets excited about that. And then when he says, "This is by far the worst town we've ever been to," I appreciate that too. So I feel like Sokka just in general is representing me. I said that earlier about the people singing, but I feel like Sokka is just representing us, the person who's annoyed by the goings-on around them. But anyway, that's it for my thoughts on episodes 1 through 5 of season 2 so far of Avatar. I am curious to see where it's going to go from here. I have a feeling, I know I was kind of harsh on these first 5 episodes, but I have a feeling that we're just going to go up from here. I'm very curious to know, what are your thoughts on these episodes? Are these ones that when you rewatch, do you skip some of these or not? But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.